Um, there are ways to heal that are available to all of us all the time.
Hmm.
Part of the reason that we call it the Whole Again Pod, shout out to my business partner Kirsten for giving giving us that name, is that the framework starts with we begin whole and ends with we can be whole again, right? Like traumatic things happen in the middle, but the framework itself is bookended, if you will, by wholeness. And to really hold the story of or the narrative of wholeness, um, pre-existing and post-existing, right? Like coming before and coming after trauma, that wholeness is there and available to us.
Hello and welcome to Emanate. I am your host, M. Quiver, and in this episode, we get to be with Teddy McGlynn-Wright. Teddy is a co-host and co-creator of Whole Again Pod, a podcast that centers healing from an integrative trauma healing framework, and there's a link for that in the show notes. Teddy is also co-creator of belonging-based facilitation, and there will be a co-led camp coming up in August in Northern California, and the information for that is also in the show notes. In addition to this amazing work, Teddy also is a tea lover and tea tender, and has impacted my life personally over many years. And I'm so grateful that we have had very in-depth conversations throughout the many moons we've known each other. And it is such a gift and pleasure to share this time and conversation with Teddy. And I know all listeners will be deeply moved from hearing Teddy's wisdom. Enjoy! Teddy McGlynn-Wright, thank you for being here and spending some of your time. And I would just love to hear, how are you arriving in this moment?
Yeah. Um, there's so many fun ways to answer that question. It is, so I'm in Belboncha in New Orleans, where it is carnival season. So Mardi Gras, so the Mardi Gras day is this coming Tuesday. And we are in what folks refer to as the deep gras. So um, essentially starting last night, there are kind of multiple parades a day, every day, all the way through Mardi Gras Day. And it has actually reminds me a little bit of being in Black Rock City, right? So if you're there for the first, whatever, through Wednesday, it's got one flavor. And then Thursday hits and the vibes change. And so we have, um, things have been very local for the last couple of weeks. And, the season lasts from, from early January all the way through Mardi Gras Day. So it's got a very local flavor, and then the flavor becomes increasingly um, other folks coming in to enjoy what we have to offer. So there's that thing that's happening, and things just start to close down. Like the library's closed, schools closed, businesses closed. Everyone's like, no one's working. I don't know what you want. Make sure you stock up ahead of time. Get your groceries, get your water, get whatever random stuff you need from the store because everyone's on the streets. Sorry. Um, and so there's, the kind of environment that I'm swimming in at the moment has that energy to it, which is really lovely. Um, and I'm coming in having just had like some, minor mouth surgery. And so just feeling like, I have like wounds in my mouth. Um, but part of the reason that I have wounds in my mouth is because I cracked a tooth like a year ago and
Mm.
didn't do anything. So, it's the result of delayed maintenance, right?
Oh.
Um, and at the beginning of the year, I mean, this is like all the astrological stuff, right? So like right around New Year's, I think it was, I got an infection and I felt it. Like I could feel, initially I was like, oh, I have this thing in my mouth that doesn't feel good. It's for whatever, whatever. And I kind of ignored it again, right? I'm very good at ignoring some things sometimes. And, um, and then it started to really hurt and swell. And, um, it didn't click for me that it was an infection for a couple of days. Like I was like, oh, I'm like it hurts, and I just assume, whatever, mouth hurt. Um, And then once it clicked that I was, fighting an infection, I did like all the things I usually do when my body has an infection, but I was a little bit behind the eight ball. And so yeah, it was like I had to go to the doctor and go to the dentist and have me put it around and be like, yes, it's infected. I was like, I know it's infected. I have I know what, what infections look and feel like, but thank you for
Yeah.
confirming that, dentist person. Um, and they gave me some antibiotics. I was already kind of on the downslope. Um, whatever. But anyway, so I was, went to the oral surgeon on Tuesday. They took out my the infected tooth or place where I was getting infections where it was cracked. They also were like, you also have these two wisdom teeth that you don't need anymore. And I was like, okay, well, here you go. Bye bye. Had my own little like goodbye meditation to my teeth. I was like, thank you, teeth. So I'm coming in. Today was like the first day that I woke up without any pain. Since at least since Tuesday. Um,
Mm.
and then I'm coming in really interested, like excited and interested. And one of the kind of themes for this year for me has been about collaboration. And so, when I got this invitation, I was like, oh, yes, of course. Like, I would love to be a guest on a podcast. Like, I want to do more guesting, So that invitation was a really immediate kind of full body yes.
Mhm.
Yeah. And I'm
Oh,
drinking some oolong. And
beautiful.
yeah,
Oh, well, I'm so glad your pain has subsided, and again, so grateful to be with you. And I'm curious, what's most alive for you in this current season of your life?
you know, um, it's been really funny. I've been like, you were talking about astrology earlier. I've been on, there's all these little astrology things popping up on my Instagram because they're like, Saturn's entering Aries. This is your season, da, 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 right? And, also Aries energy, co-Aries. And so there's something about, um, yeah, like I already named collaboration and then my particular kind of flavor of collaboration, right? So I think about, I was talking to my therapist about this, whatever, a month or so ago. And I was like, oh, I have a way that I need to collaborate. And then I have lots of ways that I'm willing to, right? So like I have there's lots of possibilities, there's a lot of range, and there are some like really basic and fundamental things that are required. And part of what's required for me in collaborating is um unsurprisingly kind of paradoxical. Like folks have to really have a pretty have to be really alert and awake to who they already are. Right. And so that's part of what's alive for me right now is both the like here's all the ways in which I want to or desire to or enjoy collaboration. Here's the kind of needs that I have around it. And then here's kind of like being increasingly awake to kind of who I am and what I'm about. Um, and as a person who um, has, not lived an entire life of self denial, but I've had a lot of practice in mm, making room for other people. And I had this really funny moment where I was like, oh, like one of the things you'll hear me say if you live in my house is like, oh, we have a lot of preferences. Like everyone in my house has a lot of preferences. And I love that we get to have those. And if I treat everything as a preference, then it's really easy for me not to get my needs met.
Mm.
Right. And so being able to make a distinction between what is necessary and what is a nice to have.
Mm.
kind of at every level. Like even, we've been doing a lot of work on our house. Our house is 120, 130 years old. And we're like, all right, what's necessary for the house and what's a nice to have? It's like, oh, well, we've been here for a few years. We get some cold days. Like, is it necessary to have, you know, um, whatever, like heaters all upstairs? It's like, well, at this point, actually it is. Like it wasn't 3 years ago, but it is now. Like we need to put some insulation in the attic and like get our heating and cooling game square for the whole house. Um, Refinishing the floors, more of a nice to have, but also, you know,
Mm.
if termites are eating the floors, now suddenly it's necessary, right? So even the being able to um, not just notice the difference or distinction between what's a preference and what's a need or what's a necessity, but also like how those things can shift over time
Oh.
and under different conditions. So
Mhm.
I think those have been things that have been like really alive for me. Yeah.
Beautiful. I love that you brought in the Aries wisdom. And what I'm hearing is it's necessary to have someone know themselves
No.
enough to then engage in. Am I hearing that right?
Yeah, and again, it depends on what that collaboration is, right? So I do a lot of coaching, right? And sometimes what happens for folks who are, and oftentimes actually, folks will come into a coaching session and they won't really know what it is that they want to bring, right? And so in that case, we're kind of in a moment um, of collaborating, right? We're kind of finding what is the thing that we're going to focus on and work with or play with or do with in this particular day, right? In this particular moment. And so in that case, it's not required that they actually have like a really kind of deep sense of knowing. Um, in that case, it's like, oh, well, a recognition that we are in this together is enough, right?
Hmm.
So thinking about the kind of levels of collaboration, if you will. I don't love the hierarchy of that, but like there are different kinds of collaborations and kind of collaborators. And for me, when I think of like the kind of I'll say it like my more profound collaborations require like a sense of knowing, right? Like a sense of
Hmm.
knowing and um ability to kind of really take care of oneself
Hmm.
so that they don't get kind of lost, that no one gets lost in that collaboration. Yeah, and then thinking about even just, I got to plant these tea plants in my backyard and like,
Oh, great.
or well, I haven't planted yours have to go in a tea bed first. So the seeds have to be in a little bed. Should probably put them out soon. I think we're almost past the kind of last frost date. But even, if I can be kind of at my most attentive to like how am I collaborating with um like all my beings in my environment, right?
Mm.
And how am I sharing and holding responsibility and reciprocity with all those, plant beings and um animal beings and whatnots, right? So it's just a really, and even I've been, last year was a big year of gut health. So it was a lot of like recognition of all my little microbes and collaborating with like this whole planet of microbes that I have living on and in me and being like, oh snap. Um, so yeah,
Mm.
just really holding that as a lens on like, how am I moving through the world?
Well, yeah, just the significance of tea for you. And, you know, um, so that reference, I had just sent you some tea seeds and knowing that you are this aspiring tea farmer. And I know one of our conversations years ago, you're like, yeah, that's where I want to end up. And so, and you're planting your tea seeds and you're tending your
Mhm.
tea love. And I'm curious, anything with that you want to share as you're drinking your oolong?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, yeesh, it's probably almost 5 years ago now where I was like, oh, I want to retire to a tea farm.
Mhm.
And I said that out loud to a number of people. And I said it out loud to my partner who was like, why are you waiting until you retire? And I was like, ugh, busted. Um, and so, joined the US League of Tea Growers and like started visiting tea farms out here. And in Louisiana, Mississippi, and um, there is this kind of part of the country that we are in or near where it makes a lot of sense actually to be able to grow tea. It's one of the few regions in the country where you can do that pretty easily, and we have a lot of kind of growing season and rain and soil and all the things that will make that work. Um, and to me, there's something about the I don't know intimacy with the plant, maybe of learning. Like I remember, going to this tea farm and I was like, "Oh, what kind of tea do you have here?" And they were like, "We grow tea." And I was like, "Yeah, but like, is it black tea? Is it oolong?" And they were like, "All tea comes from the same plant." And I was like, "What? Like, nah." Right? And as a person who's drank tea for whatever at that point, but 20 years, right, and just didn't really know much about the plant itself, right? Um, and so, was in this kind of years long learning. Not that it's stopped, but it's mm, I don't know, even say it's backward, but like it was a really steep learning curve to learn about this plant that I drink a lot of tea, and to recognize that I know actually so little about this plant and so many of the fun things that I got to learn about it. And then I continue to learn about it. Some of my favorites were like learning about processing, right? So it's a piece around like whether it's a white, a green, a long, a black, a yellow, a red, that it's all just about plucking and processing. Like all those things bring out different kind of aspects of the tea of the plant, and then how it comes into your cup.
Mm.
Uh, the other two favorite things that I've learned that are coming up for me. One is that caffeine is a mild neurotoxin, so you don't have to worry about mammals really eating your tea plants because they bite it and they're like, oh shit, they're like, I don't want more of that. Right? If you think about like a deer just walking around, it's like suddenly gets this like caffeine hit, and they're like, um, and so it's kind of it produces this chemical essentially that is protective for the plant, and then we over time relationship plucking and processing change into something that we consume and really enjoy. So poison to medicine, it's kind of always there, that thing.
Mhm.
And I think one of the other things that is both fascinating and I was very ripe for metaphor is that tea plants need a lot of metals.
Mm.
So zinc and iron in particular, because it's a big leafy green essentially, and which means they also need a more acidic soil because otherwise the metals won't dissolve. Right, literally will not dissolve in the soil. So you can have all of the nutrients available in the soil, but the soil's pH isn't low enough. The plant can't get it, and the plant will die. And the number of times where I told that story and then would look at people and ask them about like what are the nutrients that are in your soil that you just cannot absorb because of the environment that you're in right now. And they're like, "Ugh," right? Like,
Right.
and we walk through the world that way, right? Where we're like, oh, it's not that these like social nutrients or spiritual nutrients or relational or physical nutrients are not in our environment. It's that we're not in an environment where we can actually absorb them, right?
Wow.
Um, and so there is this way in which it's both obviously ripe for metaphor and like as a facilitator and a storyteller, like metaphor all day, right? And also is a plant that I could grow and eventually harvest, and it's got a very long takes a long time to like get trees, get plant trees, plant bushes that are really um robust enough that you can kind of harvest regularly. Wow, that's some of the tea journey, some of the most recent.
Incredible. Well, you just mentioned that you're a storyteller, and I'm reflecting back to 2019 when you wrote a piece called Igniting Desire. And I'd love to read a few lines from that if that feels good to you, or you could read some of the lines.
Sounds great.
Okay.
I don't have the lines in front of me, but you can
You
read
know the
them.
lines. Okay. So I'll read your words.
Yeah.
You can receive your wisdom. Our passions and desires aren't to be ignored, turned away from, consumed, or controlled. They are to be flirted with, danced with, sometimes leading, other times following, and always, always respecting.
It's
Hmm.
really weird. I mean, it's what is funny. It's a little bit disconcerting actually to like hear it. Even, I mean, you sent it to me, so I like read it and I was like, oh yeah, like that is a thing that I wrote and said and spoke. And um, as a person who doesn't do like stage work, right? I remember, again, like the invitation. You are a master at cracking invitations, and I was like, I don't know, oh, I don't know where I like write a thing and tell a thing, and like so it was a really clear yes when you invited me to be part of that show, and then it was like a whole lot of oh my god, what am I doing?
Mm,
Um, and where I landed was um, there was a in that story there is a being that is telling that story that is separate from me, right? Um, and so to hear it back, uh, yeah, I don't know, like comes in a different way.
mm,
Like I think of myself less as like the author of that story and more of like whatever the channeler of that story. Not even, and I think of it much more as a even more spoken than written, right? I mean, I had to write it down because I needed to write it down, right? But the
mhm,
story actually didn't need to be written. So I don't know, there's all these kind of flavors to it that make it, um, yeah, just funny to hear. A little bit uncomfortable, a little bit like, ooh, um, exciting, a little bit, I don't know, distant. Like it's, oh, there's, I don't know. It's, yeah, it's fascinating.
I remember even in the process, it was really beautiful how you asked me for when reading it. You're even clear about like, this is the kind of feedback that I want. And I love that because you're like, I want, you know, not the correcting and grammar, all of that. It's just like, how is it the feeling of that?
Mm, mhm.
And so, but I just pulled that out because I was like, oh, I was curious how that wisdom has been living in you since you wrote it.
Yeah, like I said, I've been in the Instagram astrology streets, and so one of the pieces that came up recently was talking about Aries as the spark before the flame.
Mm,
Um, and so so much about desire is that like there's a spark piece of it that is really present. I think for beings, and for me in this moment, it's this like what is the kind of initiatory energy of whatever? What's the impulse? What's the again before action? So pre-contemplative, pre-decisive, pre-established. Like what's the that thing? Um, One of the stories that we tell about the business is that like it had that same flavor, right? So my friend Kirsten was over. Our kids are about the same age, um, and I was like, "You want to do this? You want to build this thing? You want to do this thing together?" And she essentially was like, "What is it?" And I was like, "I don't know yet. Let's do it." She was like, "All right, cool, right?" And that was it's probably almost I don't know 2018, 2019, and initially it was really just kind of like a little side space where we could, we both had full-time jobs, we both had little kids, like, and so it was this little thing that we were kind of feeding a little bit on the side, and occasionally we would do projects and money would come through, and as we kind of just do that as an LLC. And then after being down here for a couple of years, as my job wrapped up, it was very clear that we were getting this call to like step more fully into that work. And so, I was like, hey, are we taking this leap? from it being kind of a side project that seemed to take increasing amounts of time to being like, this is the thing that we do all the time. And it was, this is the thing we do all the time. And it has been um, a really amazing journey. I mean, thinking about collaboration, like it's been such a, I don't even want to say unique, but such a special and important collaboratory, right? Like
Mhm.
co-laborating laboratory place to just be like, well, what do we want our lives to look like? Um,
Mm.
we take 2 months off a year, right? So we close our offices in July, we close our offices in December. Um, we, have salaries, we take care of our families, we're, doing health insurance stuff, retirement. Like there are all these things that we can do with the business and not have it be the thing that takes over our lives, but actually supports them. And so I think there's a thing around, with um, desire that is both about what are we longing for and moving toward, what's calling us, right? Like how do we respond to the call?
Mhm.
It is also about like what sparks, what awakes, what moment is that for us internally. And I mean, I also really love to see it. For me, I really love to see it in other people. So
Mm.
one of my favorite my kids are 10 and 12 now. And one of the coolest things about watching them move from like, I don't know, 7, 8, um, is to watch them be like have their really develop their own interests that have nothing to do with me, right? That
Mm.
are I don't really I mean, I don't have to do it. I mean, when kids are little, it's like everything that they're doing is a thing that you also have to do. And if you want them to do a thing, you have to be doing it. Everything from literally like brushing your teeth to like whatever, riding bikes or learning a new skill, instrument, whatever. And for them to be like, I have this desire, I have this
Mhm.
interest, and be like, great, how do how do I support you in that? Right. Like, um, and then the very real um part of what stands out to me is that very real piece around um when we deny or defame or disrespect desire, it does not appreciate that, right? And it shows up in our lives in some really, it can show up in our lives in really, I don't know, I would say less helpful ways. Like I think about so much of anxiety and depression, right,
Mhm.
are can be related to like suppressed desire, um, and like denied, right? The denial of what is again like what's necessary.
Mhm.
Um, denying like that's the our sense of self and who we are and how we move.
Mm. Beautiful. That brings me to this next contemplation. I remember we were walking in Seward Park, this beautiful park in Seattle, and you turned to me and asked, "How do you decide?"
Mm,
And that question has been with me, and it's a powerful question. So I'm going to ask you. And I remember how you answered then, but I'm curious now, how do you decide?
mhm. Um, what a great question.
Yeah, someone
Yeah,
brilliant asked me it. So,
yeah, yeah. Um, I mean, mostly through listening, right? Like I think about how I don't think about. I have learned pretty well over time how to listen. How to listen to myself, how to listen to what's seeking to move through me, um, what other people are asking for, needing, and saying. And so, yeah, I mean, to me, kind of all decisions I think that I make start with some sort of listening
mm,
and tuning in. And then there's kind of lots of things that happen, but the very first thing is always like, oh, what am I listening for?
mm,
What am I noticing here? What am I taking in? Um, and then doing my best to take aligned action. I think one of the things I'm a practicing Buddhist, and so this again this like paradox, right? The play of desire and desirelessness, right? Like of like really great deep self knowledge, and then also like selflessness and and like the self of no self, right? So this those things are kind of always playing. So yeah, I mean, I think of like that, mm, like listen, impulse, alignment, action.
Mm, brilliant. And this may weave into then this next question of in your work, I was taking one of your integrative healing trauma
Mm,
classes online, and you were sharing then being able to discern when we are doing activities that are actually resourcing
mm-hmm,
or coping,
mm-hmm.
and that distinction between those two. How do you know for yourself when you're in coping or resourcing?
Yeah, I mean, it's a funny one because it can be um, like to an outside observer, right? They can look like the same actions. I think that's kind of one of the. There's so many things that are fun and funny about healing, and that's one of them, right? Like from the outside, and like, oh, those two actions look the same, even from the same person, and yet they could be either really restorative or really just like, I'm just doing this thing to get through right now. So, for me, at this point in my life, there's something really potent about iteration. So when I've had these moments and been really sunk, like just kind of the like the felt sense of just being kind of really rocked, and both by things kind of outside of me, things inside of me, whatever. And I have a set of practices in my daily life. And if I do those things, I will become unsunk. And there's not a direct logic to it. It's not like, oh, well, if I, uh, like sometimes people are like, oh, well, I'm really sad. And so I cry. And I'm like, yes, those two things align, right? But like, I am feeling really devastated. And so I went to Aikido practice, or like not necessarily, like, I'm like, um, and yet the kind of combination, the ingredients that are in my present life. So I'm at the dojo, 2 to 5 times a week. I'm at my altar multiple times a week. I'm on the cushion. I'm connecting with folks who I love. And always, 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 if I'm doing those things consistently, it will always leave me more resourced than when I encounter whatever that encounter is. Um, and then when I'm coping, right? So the distinction being if in our work, we refer to it as well tending. I'm tending to my relative well-being. It will leave me more resourced than whenever I enter that situation. Whereas if I'm coping, it's really just to kind of get me through, and it will leave me kind of as resourced as I was when I entered whatever that kind of, um, choppy waters or whatever that kind of disturbance was. And those are things, one of the examples I often will use is I'm like, love Avatar: The Last Airbender, right? So I can sit down, or Dragon Prince. These are like, I think, so medicinal. There's such good medicine in there. And I can sit down, like, watch an episode or two and be like, okay, like I'm a little more juiced. Something has shifted, right? Or I can watch like 10 and then not sleep well and then wake up the next morning and be like, wow, right? And so this distinction between like, for me, um, coping often feels like numbing. And the distinction between when am I resourcing, when am I coping is that if I'm coping, there's something about it that is bringing some amount of numbness as
Mm.
opposed to more aliveness of feeling. Um, Again, I was just at the dentist, right? So they were like, do you want an IV? I was like, no. They're like, do you want the gas? I was like, give me that gas.
Yeah.
Uh, And, they put these, they numb your mouth, right? They're like big ass needles of Novocaine, and then they're just in there and um, you can't feel pain, or I could not feel the pain, but could feel pressure sensation. And I think of coping as like that, right? Like everything is muted.
Mm,
So I don't feel the, um, the pain of that emotion or the pain of that, condition or the pain of that reality. I can still feel the pressure of it. And at some point, the pain will still be there. Like it's not invisible. It's not, yeah, the only way I can think of it, like it's muted, but it's not absent.
mhm,
And so when I'm coping, just like when I was numb, I was numb all the way to my ears. It was very funny. Uh, but after that numbness wears off, the pain is very present. Right.
mhm,
And so when we're in that coping and resourcing distinction, I needed to do a set of things that were going to help my system recover,
mhm,
not just my mouth be numb. It's not this is not a metaphor, right? This is this is direct translation.
mhm,
It's like when we're having those kinds of experiences, yes, sometimes we need to numb, right?
mhm,
Selectively in that way, right? For a moment, for a period of time, and the pain will still be there.
mhm,
And so being prepared for that pain is also a really important part. So that it's not to like demonize coping, but it's to be like, what's the right coping? What's the right amount of coping
mhm,
and and resourcing, so that we're not in that state of kind of perpetual denial, which is like we were saying, it's just a really dangerous state to be in, at
mm,
least for these human beings.
mhm. Wow, that's so relevant and relatable in this moment. Did I hear you say Avatar: The Last Airbender?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, we were watching that recently, and it's been so great for, um, the Fire Nation, right? Like, how to be in right relationship with fire.
Hmm.
And my boy, we've talked about, like, when mama is coping, I might be more like Prince Zuko inside, and
Mm.
he'll remind me, he's like, "Mama, we gotta be like Uncle Iroh.
Oh, boy.
Back to tea."
Just saying, Uncle Iroh is my hero for sure.
Um, well, that really is a beautiful segue into this body of work that you've been tending for a long time, and you've now shared this body of work on your own podcast, Whole
Hmm.
Again Pod. Yeah. And so, how's that felt for you to be bringing your voice and
Mm.
years of practice into the public through this Whole Again Pod?
Yeah, I mean, it comes back to like one of the things we were talking about initially, right? Which is this, uh, again, kind of collaborating and mm, and being, kind of knowing the self and then being out loud, which I don't think I talked about as much, but I think there's this part of it that is about, um, what are we willing to say out loud? And my collaborator in that work, Leslie Briner, who, co-hosts the podcast with me, and has been the other person who's really been kind of instrumental in stewarding this framework um, from Spark to whatever it is now. And the podcast, actually, I will say, was also conceptualized on a walk in Seward Park. Um,
That's cool.
yeah, it's a fertile ground over there.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm right now working on, publishing it, right? So in a, academic journal with a friend and colleague of mine who I used to work more closely with, and I'm now getting to work with as she enters into her retirement phase. She's like, "Hey, I got some time to share some skills about how we get these things out to the world." And I was like, "Yeah, it is it's one more kind of avenue to have this, um, framework in the world." It's, um, it has felt unsettling. Um, Most of the work that I've gotten to do in general, but also with the framework, has almost always been like in rooms with people.
Mm.
And so to publish a thing, to like put a thing out into the world and not have pretty immediate feedback where I can kind of, think, I'm like, oh, do you understand? Like, are you picking up what I'm putting down? Is this it? Like, without having that, I used to tell folks that I much prefer cooking to baking because I can always adjust up to the last second of when I'm cooking. But when I'm baking, it's like, you get what you get. Whatever, whatever you did is what's going to come out. Um, and so it's more of a baking flavor, right? Like it's more of a,
Mm.
um, wanting to be as clear as I possibly can and not get hung up on the perfectionism of it, which is, as a recovering perfectionist, is really tricky. To be like, oh, how is it not just what's kind of good enough, but is it like clear enough
Mm.
and finished enough that I can put it out into the world and then be in kind of enough listening feedback cycles that it can still be kind of in the refinement and um, knowing that those are kind of longer cycles. Yeah, okay. Um, yeah, so that's I don't know if that answers what it's felt like. It's what it's been like.
Mm. Mhm.
Um, and then some of the reception, like I think in the first week after we put out the first episode, got a message from a kid that I went to summer camp with. It was like, I direct this project for, folks who are doing international work and uh, with refugees and trauma survivors. And like, this is so great. And kind of like sent it to all of these people, right? And like, and then had, one of the guys that runs like the chess clubs and chess tournaments down here where my son's a big chess player. And so like, it was like, hey, I listened to your podcast and I have some questions, right? And I was like, so literally, like first week out, I was like, "This is great. This is everything I wanted." Right, and at that point, I think where like 30 people had listened to it, or so. Like it wasn't like there's this huge number of millions of people, right? Like, um, and so having the getting to experience kind of satisfaction in that,
Mhm.
um, again, that kind of the relationship between desire and satisfaction, right? Of like, oh, I can not get so wrapped up in what it is to be successful by someone else's standard, right? Like, oh, I have to have whatever thousands or millions of listeners and all of these things. It's like, well, you know, when we sat down and we're like, what's the intention of this project of putting it out in this channel? It was like, well, it's to get it to folks who we're not in the room with.
Mhm.
Like, I will, I would not have been in a room doing work around trauma and healing and secondary traumatic stress with the guy who runs the local chess club. Like, there's just no planet where that's the thing that happens, right? But he was, whatever. We were in a relationship. We shared it and he was able to kind of pick that up and take it with him into whatever he's going into next, right? And so, that intention of sharing it beyond folks that we're in the room with and folks who will just wouldn't, yeah, folks who kind of wouldn't pick it up otherwise. That's been really great.
Beautiful. Right, and then all those invisible, unknown ripples that continue from those who listen, it just
You're
can
welcome.
continue to ripple in a way. Do you need anything right now in family zone?
Yeah, give me one moment.
Yeah, yeah, take your time.
Mhm.
There's nothing like having kids to help recover from perfectionism.
Yeah,
I
one
don't
of my
know.
favorite stories is, my son is started playing chess 5 or 6 and went to his first tournament. And it was an all ages tournament, so he's like playing against grown men. So one of the things I love about chess is it's one of the only things where you can see like grown people and children competing essentially on the same field, and it's not weird. Um,
Right. Yeah.
and so he went and he played, lost every game in the tournament hall, and had a blast. Like was just like I had so much fun and like played in the Skittles room, which is kind of like the kind of non-tournament games that people are just kind of playing in the other room. Met his little chess friends, like was running around, has little chess buddies, and I was like I almost cried. I was like, I've done something right where like my kid can like go to this thing, lose all his games, and still have a great time because that was not available to me. Like I was a kid who like if I would have lost 6 games, I would have literally never played chess again. I'm like, well, that's a wrap. Darn it. Right. Um, so yeah, I mean it's been a real both in the sense of things will never be perfect, but also getting to recognize and reckon with like, oh yeah, like you're experiencing something really different than I did.
Beautiful. It's so good. So good. It's so good. Um, for okay, this whole again pod is brilliant. There's 6 episodes in this first season, and everyone who's listening to this, I will have the link in the show notes. And if you haven't already listened, please do, because you cover the principles of the integrated trauma healing framework,
Hmm.
which is what I was grateful to have taken that online course with you.
Hmm.
And then you and Leslie share such beautiful lived experience and examples that are just, to me, the foundation of our collective humanity to bring hope. And so, but I'm curious for, in your own words, for those who are not yet familiar
Hmm.
of this podcast, what would you want them to know about it?
Yeah. I mean, other than what you just said, which is lovely. Um, for us, it really is like again, the intention, the labor of it is to really democratize healing, right? I think the way that, particularly when we talk about trauma, it's been so kind of isolated and um, professionalized and clinicalized, right? Like if you experience the trauma and it's broken your brain, you have to go and get this like evidence-based treatment from this professional in order to like have your brain work again. And and then trauma is this like really rare thing that's whatever. Um, and that's just not the reality, right? That's not the reality that we're living now. It may have been the reality at some point. The reality that we're living right now is that we're living under persistently traumatic conditions. Lots of folks are being traumatized in big and small ways, often. And most people who are experiencing traumatization are not going to a clinician. They're going to a loved one. They're going to a homie. They're going to a family member. They're going to, a sensei, a teacher, whatever, right? They're going to these places. And these folks have not been trained, don't feel equipped to really be with that. And so the invitation from the pod is to really say, like, hey, yo, the way that we've been trained to think about trauma is incomplete. We
Mhm.
would like to offer a more uh, kind of intuitive understanding of how trauma shows up in our lives and in our systems beyond just individually, but collectively, systemically, historically, and intergenerationally. And um, and really, really, really crucially and importantly, um, there are ways to heal that are available to all of us all the time. Part of the reason that we call it the Whole Again Pod, shout out to my business partner Kirsten for giving giving us that name, is that the framework starts with we begin whole and ends with we can be whole again, right? Like traumatic things happen in the middle, but the framework itself is bookended, if you will, by wholeness, and to really hold the story of or the narrative of wholeness, um, pre-existing and post-existing, right? Like coming before and coming after trauma, that wholeness is there and available to us. Right? And again, we think about just that piece around desire, right? The desire, the impulse, the spark to move toward wholeness is something that is innate, and it is something that is available to us all the time. Um, and is often like a lot closer than we think.
Mhm. Yeah. I just love
So
when you were sharing the we become whole again.
yeah, Yeah, this is not an individualist project, you know.
No. Back to collaboration and all those ways of being in relationship. Yeah, it's just brilliant. And just what the without, because I want to direct people to your podcast, but the 4 words that are the innate
Hmm.
wholeness that we're born with:
Hmm.
safety, belonging, dignity, and agency.
Hmm.
Those words, I'm curious just how you in your daily life and those daily interactions have that as a compass for you.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, I was literally just talking to folks about this yesterday. I do some work training facilitators, and so one of the things that I ask them to be kind of alert to is like, how am I accessing these? Like, where and when and under what conditions am I getting kind of not just my safety needs met, but like, where am I actually practicing safety? So I do, I like them as a compass. I like them as a check, for myself at the end of the day, at the end of the week. Um, I was just in Tucson with my best friend for a long weekend, and because it was a place that was warmer than where either of us was living, and was one hop from where we were living. Where so it needed to be like one flight and warmer. It's a very small region of the country, and the sense of belonging to be to be with someone, be seen by someone who has, for me, has known me over quite a long time period, has seen me through many phases of my life, and still holds me in high regard. Not like uh, not unrealistic, not like,
Mhm.
oh my God, you're so right, but like actual, real, highly regarded, like highly regarded in the midst of all those things, not distant but close. And part of the way that I know that I belong is that there is high regard, right? So there's something on my dignity and worth, and there's something about proximity. There's like closeness there. To be highly regarded by someone who's kind of far away. I mean, it comes to the thing that you're like, Teddy, you're like very specific about the feedback that you wanted. Like, I'm very specific about the feedback that I'm looking for and who I'm asking for it, from whom I'm asking, because we get lots of unsolicited feedback from folks who are not qualified to offer that to us, and so getting really grounded, loving feedback from folks who are qualified to offer that. Again, it's kind of one of those ways that for me, like, sparks my sense of belonging, often my sense of agency, reminds me of my own kind of dignity, my like kind of integrity. And I mean, if I'm going to kind of complete this cycle, like, also is creates a kind of bedrock of safety that where I can take risks, right? Where I'm not afraid of being kind of voted off the island or being dismissed or denigrated or dehumanized by this person, right? So to have that kind of as the foundation means that, yeah, we can kind of take risks and make decisions and make mistakes, um, and not be kind of shamed and excluded from that kind of circle of humanity and of belonging.
Well, you've sort of answered this already, but if there's anything specifically that is your own ignition for this
Hmm.
powerful work, important work that you're doing in the world, and then how do you maintain that flame?
The short answer is, you know, folks are really struggling and are really hurting.
Mhm.
And one of the messages that came through in um, a retreat that we have for the business in the fall was that the medicine is everywhere you find it. And I had not had that configuration of words before, but it is something that I've believed for a very long time, and a place from which I've operated from a long time. And so I think that's actually the answer, right? I think that the real answer is like the medicine is everywhere we find it. And uh, really needing people to know that and
Mm.
to be able to access that.
Yeah. especially right in this moment.
Yeah.
And it's what, again, I love so much about what you are sharing and have been creating for all these years is that it's not siloed off, and healing isn't like only with a certain professional behind closed doors. It's in all these connections
Yeah.
of when can we listen, be witness, and witness each other and be with. And um yeah. So thank you for being with today. And I know you've got a full life, and just really grateful for your time and wisdom. And are you going to be getting ready for this Mardi Gras yourself?
Yeah, we're deciding about costumes. So I do some costuming this weekend. And yeah, really just this is probably a um like some years we have a very like this is our Mardi Gras schedule and we're gonna do these things, and some years it's more of a let's see where the Mardi Gras um vibes take us. So I think this is a little bit more of the latter. This is a little bit more of a well, what do we what do we feel? What are we feeling into? What are we listening
Mm,
to? Um,
yeah.
are we going like big parades? Are we gonna go see, black masking Indians? Are we gonna see like what, are we gonna walk to parades? Are we gonna bike? Are we gonna drive and like commit to being there the whole day? Like what's the thing? And are we all doing a thing together? Or are we all kind of spinning out in different configurations? So yeah, I'll listen for the invitations. I think it's
Hmm. Listening.
more
Back
fun.
to that listening. And what feels next for you?
Um, we're hosting this co-led camp and at the end of August, the last full week of August, through my business, through In the Works. And it's a week-long immersive retreat on co-leadership and how folks
Mm.
can collaborate, can co-lead, can lead together, can make decisions together, can strategize together, um, and can sustain the work together. What we've seen is lots of folks are interested in co-leadership models. Some folks are in them, and folks uh, are not super skilled about how to actually do that. Some of the models that they're kind of working from don't work for them, and so after kind of hearing that from a number of places for a few years, we're like, all right, well, let's do a thing. Let's invite folks. We're going to invite about 30 folks from all over the country to come and spend a week in California, and I think slightly Northern California, I guess, um, at Westerbeck Ranch, and yeah, and really learn and practice and connect with other co-leaders. Um, yeah, so that's really exciting. We still have spots open, so if folks want to, well, I can send you the link. People can check it
Absolutely.
out. But it'll be dope. And
Oh, that sounds amazing. August?
yeah, it's the end of August, the maybe 23rd to 28th, something. It's that last full week of August, whatever that is.
Oh, okay. Yes, I'll put that in the show notes. And oh, I want to go. I'll have a little baby though, so
Walker, you wouldn't be the only one.
wouldn't be the only one. Okay. Well, thank you again, dear friend, for this time and sharing a cup of tea and your wisdom. And I'd love to, unless there's anything else before we close with a blessing, anything else you want to share?
That was really, I appreciate the invitation. Yeah, thanks for inviting me. Thanks for making it happen. I feel like it was very like, yeah, sure, whatever. And I was like, I'll be honest, it was not my calendar. It's not gonna happen. You're like, great, calendar. Here are the dates. And I was like, great, let's go. So yeah, appreciate the invitation and the diligence and responsiveness there.
Absolutely. So, for the listeners, just to have a blessing, and I can start and you can complete if that feels good. And you
But
just say, may you remember
mm,
that healing is available in little moments in connection with others.
May we remember that the medicine is everywhere we find it.
Mm. Yes. Beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Appreciate you.